But there's something rather extraordinary coming from Diamond. Here's your look at the new Diamond Select X-Men the Animated Series. This is the Cyclops resin bust. Scott Summers was the first of two sons born to Major Christopher Summers, a test pilot for the U.S. Air Force, and his wife, Catherine Christopher, was flying his family home from vacation when their plane crashed. To save their lives, Catherine pushed Scott and his brother Alex out of the plane with only available parachutes. With the parents presumed dead, the two boys were placed in an orphanage. As a teenager, Scott's mutant power first erupted from his eyes as an uncontrollable blast of optic force. Scott's display of power attracted the attention of the mutant telepath Professor Charles Xavier, who enlisted him as the first member of the X-Men, a team of young mutants who trained to use their powers in the fight for human-mutant equality. This resin bust of Cyclops is based on his appearance in X-Men the Animated Series, is limited to only 3,000 pieces, and includes a certificate of authenticity. Those wishing to pick up the X-Men leader for themselves, let me first give you some 411, some necessary information I feel for if you guys are looking to pick up this one for yourself. You probably want to know how big this stands. Well, the bust of Cyclops stands 5.9 inches in height. And centimeters, let's switch to that right now, a little over 15 centimeters, 15.1 to be exact. I'd like to send out a big thank you to the folks over at Diamond Select who are nice enough to provide this sample that we're having a look at in this review. Again, if you are interested in picking this one up for yourself, the very limited release of the Cyclops bust is limited to only 3,000 pieces. Because this was a provided sample, the numbered sequence out of 3,000 would normally be listed right here. It's not in this case. But this is an authentic Diamond Select Toys Marvel and X-Men the Animated Series Cyclops resin bust. It was designed by Barry Bradfield and sculpted by Varner Studios. Diamond are no strangers to the idea of resin busts. We've, of course, in previous years have gotten many DC releases, specifically the Batman animated series, some of my personal favorites. Enter now into the foray of the X-Men animated series, which again for me was a staple Saturday mornings growing up. I would turn on the TV on Fox Kids, if anybody remembers that, and would watch the exploits of the X-Men. Truthfully, I will still say the animation was far superior in the very limited run Pride of the X-Men, but that's a discussion for another day. Having a look at the bust itself, one of the calling cards for many of the bust releases is that they take one consistent base and they make that the base of all the resin busts moving forward. In the case of the X-Men, I'm guessing that this base is going to be a familiar sight with all of the releases, kind of really liking the consistency that Diamond Select does do by having all the bases the exact same to one another. Then again, the only thing that's really changing is the character that's portrayed above the base. As for the base itself, it's a purple of combination, different lighters and darker versions of purple with bands of black wrapped around the bottom. If we tilt it upside down, this would be the place where you would be treated to, once again, the number out of potential 3,000. This one just happens to be blank. 4 feet are planted on the underside of the base so that you don't have to worry about the base scratching any surfaces where you decide to display Cyclops for yourself. I try my best to place what the display base is actually of. It was a lot easier, I feel, when we were looking at the animated series resin busts, because those were the rooftop buildings, those brown buildings in the background when you had Batman sort of swinging in the foreground. This, again, has me a little bit more perplexed. Could be something that you would expect to see from the Danger Room, the lair, perhaps, of Mr. Sinister. I don't know. It could be really nothing at all. It could be something, it could be nothing. If it certainly is nothing, the detailing and the two-tone effect of using the purple is certainly a nice touch. And I think it complements whatever character they decide to perch atop of the display base. With X-Men the Animated Series, I'm drawing a blank, actually, the number of X-Men characters that make up that show that would have had this sort of color scheme. I can rhyme off a few. There's, of course, Mr. Sinister that has more of a bluish effect on his costume. And, of course, there's the Sentinels. From the immediate list, the A-list of X-Men characters, I can't place many X-Men members that would utilize purple. So I think purple is a smart choice on their part. And they probably deliberated a while to come up with a color scheme that would work consistently across the board, that would not interfere or take away from the color scheme of the figure that's on top. And I think purple is the best way they could have gone. As for Cyclops, being that he is a bust normally its namesake lives up to the fact that you're really only getting about this much of statue. Generally the shoulders across and the top of the head. Diamond Select gives you a little bit extra something because they of course give you the torso. The only thing poorly omitted here from poor Scott Summers is the fact that he has lost his legs. While again the consistent across the board is the fact that all the X-Men figures, character-wise, these statues would not have any legs whatsoever. It certainly does lead me to come up with the possible idea that if they haven't thought of this already, based on how well they managed to pull this one off, I would love to see them do a standalone X-Men animated series figure line that has this type of shading to it. Just an idea, something to throw out, just throw off into the clouds and hopefully somebody catches it with one of those butterfly nets. If anybody is watching, perhaps from Diamond Select, just an idea. Love to see an X-Men animated series. I don't know even where licensing is tied up on the X-Men animated series line, but imagining, if you will, we got an X-Men animated Marvel Select line. That would be so exciting. Going back, though, to the figure, not spinning too far off on tangent, one thing I did think when I got this out of the packaging was that I thought I might have had a factory defect. You'll see that there's a big line, a gash, if you will, of black running across the front of Scott's trunks. I think now after the fact, the more I look at it and the more I see that there's also additional panel lining that's making up the majority of his body, and especially in areas of yellow, I don't think it's necessarily a factory defect. If anything, if that was a defect and an accidental slashing of black, I think it works well in this case because you see other examples of that elsewhere too. For Cyclops's, I always want to feel the need to pluralize that, for his face sculpt, it's really quite good. This cell shading combination with a black bold panel lining really does make this look like something that would have been pulled from the animated series. Although I feel, honestly, that Diamond pulls it off better. One of the standout things that I noticed going back and watching the series again, the animation doesn't hold up as well as maybe I thought it was when I was younger. The shading, if you will, in the animated series was resulting in more really bold black lining. The shading was very stark. Here you get more subtlety done by Diamond, and I think it works a lot better. The transitioning of the darker shading, you can see it around here, around the abdomens, on the under sections of his chest, and the under areas there of his arms, look like that's something naturally forming by having the light shining on the top and creating this natural shadow underneath. And that's something that they pulled off themselves with the paint job. Additionally to that, I really like the fact that they did add this reflective surface, sort of the areas in which light would bounce off the costume. Here in this case with Cyclops, he's got it on his forearm, he's got it on his bicep, and he's also got it on his shoulder. Carries a little bit also on the top of his muscle, the pectoral muscle there as well. The face sculpt, though, is really quite nice. Something you want to be very mindful of when you pick up a resin bust statue for yourself. All the fragile things that you would normally expect to get with the plastic gallery statues become tenfold when you start looking at things that are made of resin. Things like the little starburst effect, the starting of which could be the optic blast that's about to be omitted from his visor. This could definitely be something that you'd want to be very careful of, that you don't actually clip, bang in any way. That could most definitely break off. But it definitely does look like something that I could see from the series. Just, again, a little bit better executed, if you ask me. It's a good size as well. One thing I really like about the resin busts is that they're of a size that fits perfectly for desks and shelf space. It doesn't really ask or command a lot of attention for space, so you can really put a lot of these on the shelf. And, you know, again, you can get as many of these as Diamond Select are willing to release. Some nice shading again done on the back, a nice airbrushing of this darker, almost black, maybe possibly a really dark blue has been incorporated into the spine section of his costume, and it really, again, looks quite good. The pop of the yellow, I think, is really where this showcases the nicest. Even that reflective surface, the light bouncing to the tops here of his costume, he gets a little bit of that light also reflecting off the top of his strap there as well. Of course, he's got the familiar X-Men logo present in the top corner of his strap and as well down on the belt section there as well. And that's not simply just been painted on either. You know, instead, it's actually got some recessed sections of red and foreground areas of black in the X that it does give you a little bit of extra depth happening there as well. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I really do quite like this statue a lot. I will admit that the original X-Men the animated series has aged a bit to go back to and rewatch again, but certainly this has given me those nostalgic vibes. The nostalgia of watching the old classic X-Men TV series. I feel like I'm reliving that to some extent with this release from Diamond Select, though I will honestly say, I think what they've managed to pull off here on the shading and the lighting does work a lot better on the bust version of Cyclops than it actually did in the animated series. Seeing what we ended up getting with the Diamond Select Batman animated series bust line, there's good reason to believe that this isn't going to be the end of the X-Men animated series bust, and Cyclops being just the first of many. I just think of the cool characters that they could release in resin form. I hopefully think, though, that we're not simply just going to be getting all the X-Men. I'd love to get some sprinklings of some villains in there as well. But, again, if you go back, and as history shown us how well they handled the animated series line with both heroes and villains, I'm certain that Diamond Select are going to be giving us a whole heaping bunch of evil mutants in there as well, sprinkled across the landscape of just the X-Men members themselves. You never know, we may even get ourselves a Sentinel, probably not one-to-one scale, or at least scale to Cyclops here. It's probably going to be about the same size. But I would certainly love to see a Mr. Sinister. I am a bit of a sucker for Mr. Sinister. And just imagining like the case of Juggernaut and Apocalypse and certainly Magneto, there would be definitely a lot to handle. And I really think it's in good hands with the folks over at Diamond Select. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. It's not really quite a resin bust. Again, bust usually relates more so to just a shoulder and a head. I like that they give you a little bit extra. And speaking of a little bit extra, just FYI, X-Men animated series figure line, Diamond Select, I know you guys can make that happen. A big thank you, by the way, to the folks over at Diamond Select who were nice enough to send this sample my way. If you have picked up this one for yourself, let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the X-Men animated series Cyclops, or based on this review and this review alone. Also, I'm curious if, and I can pose this question to the members of the mob, if you guys don't mind me asking this question, which do you guys prefer more? The X-Men animated series or the very short-lived X-Men Pride of the X-Men? If I could go back, and I have gone back and watched both series, Pride of the X-Men I happen to think has superior animation and just feels more like a comic book than the animated series. Animated series, to its credit, along with the 90s Spider-Man cartoon series, both benefited from the fact it had a lot of episodes, it covered a lot of story aspects, and it had a lot of characters that you know and love. So points for that can be given to the X-Men animated series, but again, personally speaking, I kind of like Pride of the X-Men just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Always weigh in on your thoughts down below. I love reading your comments. If you guys are also new to this channel, and digging this guy's content, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. Periodically keep your peepers peeled to the home page and see if there's any videos. Maybe you've gone away on vacation, see if there's anything you may have missed along the way. Your best place to find all that is just checking out the home page. So make sure you do check that out periodically, especially in 2020. With the uncertainties of YouTube, it's always a good place to make sure that you've watched everything that I've released up to this point and far beyond the stretches of the future of 2020. Stay tuned, guys, members of the mob and muchachos. There's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way. Going to be having a look at some other cool stuff from the folks over at Diamond Select. So again, keep your peepers peeled for that. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.